いやつはすっ込んでろ。一人で十分だ。
There is a fine line between being driven and being obsessed. Being dedicated to a cause and continuously working towards it can be quite tenacious. However, if done in moderation, it can help people achieve their goals eventually and also set a good example for their peers. But that was not the case with the Goblin Slayer. His obsession with killing goblins was so deeply rooted that he wouldn't, or rather couldn't, see much beyond it. In the beginning of Season 1, we saw that the Goblin Slayer didn't know that other monsters apart from goblins existed and that they needed to be killed as well. He didn't know the value of having a team that eventually became trusted friends, as he had been on quests to kill goblins alone earlier. We've seen other slayers across anime until now. There are dragon slayers, god slayers, devil slayers, and spirit slayers in Fairy Tail, and an entire dedicated series to demon slayers centered around a boy who is also quite driven to kill demons and find a way to turn his sister into a human from her demon form. But neither of them had the bloodlust to eradicate negative creatures like demons or goblins without discrimination. However, obsessions of this kind have often a deep-rooted and unresolved pain that drives them to that length. It is quite probable that the Goblin Slayer's obsession with killing goblins whenever and wherever possible stems from an unresolved trauma that he has shoved under the rug for a long time. So, in this video, we will analyze the Goblin Slayer origin story, where we will try to find possible causes for why the Goblin Slayer takes his title so seriously. For more content on the Goblin Slayer series and other anime analysis, please subscribe to Marvelous Anime by hitting that bell icon and setting it to all. Now let's dive right in. A brutal protector in an inhuman world. Goblin Slayer's introduction to the series. There is always the need for an unbiased and brutal protector in an inhuman world, be it in a world of demons, giants, or magical creatures. The Goblin Slayer series is set in a fantasy world where warriors, mages, priests, and priestesses walk through the door to look for a quest of their choice to earn their daily bread. Each of the questers is ranked according to their experiences fighting and killing magical creatures like goblins, who in this setup were growing into a menace for citizens who lived in that town. The questionnaires were handed chains of different metals to separate them based on their experiences. The newest members who have just learned combat and magic are given the porcelain chains as they work their way up the ladder. They receive the golden rank chains. Our hero holds the platinum rank chain, which is the highest in the guild so far. His entry into the story couldn't have been more controversial than even characters like Denji from Chainsaw Man or Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan. A group of porcelain rank Goblin Slayers, a mage and a combatant, are about to set out on their adventure. They were falling short of a priest or princess. Enter Priestess. She is shy, nervous, and underconfident about her abilities. Nevertheless, they recruit her into the team and set out on their quest. However, their quest to kill goblins turns ugly as everyone in the group is either killed and mutilated or stripped and raped. The Priestess was able to come out alive because of our hero, the Goblin Slayer. The Goblin Slayer's entry into the scene is also kind of intimidating, as seen by the fact that the Priestess herself didn't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy. He mercilessly slaughtered goblins, even if they were harmless young babies. He also mercifully killed one of the group members who had bled out enough and knew she couldn't survive, even with the Priestess's healing powers. And not to forget, the Goblin Slayer has the habit of counting the number of goblins he has killed. This trait resembles that of a serial killer, which in a way he is, except he's a good serial killer. Why does the Goblin Slayer hate goblins so much? Is it related to his past? As covered in the introduction, there is trauma behind the Goblin Slayer's character being the way he is. Early in the second episode, he reveals that when he was a boy, his village was ambushed by goblins who slaughtered everyone in the village, including the cowgirl's parents. To make matters worse, he also witnessed those ruthless, mindless creatures rape and kill his older sister. This led him to train himself and learn how to slaughter goblins. The Goblin Slayer specifically takes quests involving killing goblins. With the pretext, it is evident that he does that out of hatred and spite, when what he doesn't understand is that no number of goblins he kills will bring back his sister or the villagers that were killed. But now he has reached a point where killing goblins is the only thing he knows. The guild girl points out that the quests that involve killing goblins are one of the lowest paid missions and are sometimes taken by inexperienced questers to gain experience, that instead they get killed. The Goblin Slayer also admits that because of his bloodlust to kill goblins, he hardly had the time or made the effort to socialize and became socially awkward. This is evident in the latter half of the series and in Season 2, where the Goblin Slayer is unable to pick up hints dropped by the Sword Maiden about her feelings for the Goblin Slayer. He was also tagged a weirdo who never removed his helmet and had rather rusted old armor that he wore all the time, in comparison to those adventurers who wore vibrant new armor. The Goblin Slayer is also called a weirdo as he goes on quests alone most of the time before the priestess joins the guild and begins accompanying him. Why is the Goblin Slayer treated like an outcast? How does he have a silver rank? The Goblin Slayer is treated like an outcast as he is socially awkward, weirdly dressed, and always has his helmet on as he is shy to reveal his face. The hatred for killing goblins who robbed him of his childhood had stunted his social development, where he learned to have friends, talk to people, and enjoy someone's company. Instead, he's quiet, socially awkward, aloof, and a mystery, as no one knows what he feels. He has been a part of social gatherings where people drank, and so did he, but his stoic nature and demeanor made it difficult to guess if he got drunk or wasted. That begins to change when he meets the higher elf, the dwarf mage, and the lizard magician. As they join the Goblin Slayer with a priestess in a group, he begins to realize that having a team is beneficial as it helps in getting jobs done faster and more efficiently than being a one-man army. The Goblin Slayer eventually befriends them as the series progresses, and one night as everyone sits around a bonfire, he admits that they have become his friends, whom he will go to any lengths to protect. And an outcast like him being accepted by a group was a big deal for him, as no other group of questers in the guild was eager to team up with him because of his personality and outer appearance. The Goblin Slayer's battle strategies had improved significantly after he had a team of his own. He had an elf who could fight with a bow and arrow, a priestess who could use magic to heal and protect a group from goblin attacks, a dwarf shaman who could exorcise and kill goblins, and a lizard magician who could increase manpower by summoning skeletal lizards that could operate independently. Describing his relationship, or rather situationship, with the characters. The Goblin Slayer and the priestess share a bond of trust and respect. The Goblin Slayer has accompanied the priestess since her first mission and prioritizes her safety before his own. With the elf, the Goblin Slayer has a light-hearted brother-sister relationship. The elf knows that the Goblin Slayer will have her back and vice versa. They share light moments of dry humor in the middle of the season, which is a welcome change in the otherwise serious and dull environment of the series. The Goblin Slayer trusts the combat spells of the dwarf shaman. Their relationship is similar to that of the two soldiers who know what the other person is capable of and acts in situations of attacks and battles accordingly. The lizard magician and the Goblin Slayer share good terms. They have fought many battles together. The magician is willing to go out of the way to help the Goblin Slayer in exchange for melted cheese. The Goblin Slayer shares a rather one-sided relationship with his Sword Maiden. The Sword Maiden has strong romantic feelings for him, but he fails to understand those. But he is ready to protect the Sword Maiden from goblins, even if they were in her dreams. The Goblin Slayer, Cowgirl, and the Guild Girl share a relationship that is between acquaintanceship and friendship. They like talking with each other, especially the Cowgirl, who cares a lot for the Goblin Slayer. They, along with the priestess, elf, dwarf shaman, and the lizard magician, are also seen hanging out together by the riverside on a normal day when they are not on their way to completing a quest. How has Goblin Slayer's journey across seasons 1 and 2 changed him? The Goblin Slayer has had an incredible journey across the seasons, especially after he had a team of his own who he can rely on and trusts him. In the beginning of Season 1, the Goblin Slayer was a silent killer who thought he was better off doing the job alone, even at the cost of putting his life in danger. In Season 1, he was driven by his hatred for goblins and his homicidal obsession with killing them all. He had a single-track mind that led him to be ruthless in haunting goblins, leaving nothing to possibilities and chances, and pushing his newly formed team to be prepared whenever and wherever possible. He didn't hesitate to stand against the odds, facing off with goblin hordes in order to kill as many as he could before they harm him. Soon after, he built a team of his own and learned the values of team building and team spirit. The soft and kind side of him began surfacing. He is friendly but struggles to sustain conversations with people as he fails to initiate conversations with them and only answers questions shot at him. The Goblin Slayer was also prioritizing the safety of his companions and civilians over his obsession with killing goblins. This was evident when he protected his childhood friend's farm, the Cowgirl, and was ready to give up everything to get help to make sure it was safeguarded from future attacks. Since then, he has been called the Frontier's Kindest. Transitioning from Season 1 to Season 2, we see that the Goblin Slayer opens up to learning more about subjects like other monsters like ogres, who are more powerful than goblins and need more strategy and knowledge to plan attacks and to take him down. He is always looking for new knowledge and information to absorb and learn more efficient ways ways of tracking, trapping, and killing goblins. As the Goblin Slayer spends more time with the team, he begins to acclimate and warm up to them, thinking for others and on rare occasions making remarks involving dry humor. Towards the end of Season 1, we also see that he begins to give himself room for making mistakes, failing and asking for help. This is seen during one of the quests where the Goblin Slayer is defeated by the Goblin Lord when he fights alone. When the Goblin Slayer was about to be killed, the priestess stepped in and cast 2 protection spells to trap the Goblin Lord. The Goblin Lord tries to trick the priestess by begging for mercy, but he fails and ultimately gets killed by the Goblin Slayer. In Season 2 until the recent episodes, we see the Goblin Slayer has gained a second romantic admirer apart from his childhood friend, the Cowgirl. The Sword Maiden has had some sort of weakness for the Goblin Slayer from the start. She, unlike the Cowgirl, gets frustrated when the Goblin Slayer makes blunt, straightforward remarks. He only means business, and the Sword Maiden wishes to explore more. This shows that the Goblin Slayer needs to learn how to talk with women. This is seen when the Sword Maiden brings a stone inscription to the Goblin Slayer and remarks that he should know how to be by the side of a woman in need. She also changes her body language and sits close diagonally facing him so that her breasts rub his arm, although he admits that he will have to learn that as a part of being socially adept. Catching hints of the Sword Maiden is highly debatable. Why does the Goblin Slayer hide his face? What does he really look like? Because of his stoic, protective personality and ruthless killing and fighting for good over evil, the Goblin Slayer is popular amongst fans in manga and anime series alike, but nobody knows how their hero looks. He never took off his helmet, which fans and the guild members find peculiar, yet at one point in the narrative, one of the priestesses requests he takes off his helmet and reveal how he looks. The Goblin Slayer takes off his helmet in manga chapters 15 and 12 of the anime. He is so gorgeous and handsome that everyone who sees him is in awe. They never expected a ruthless, harsh person to have such a tender and soft appearance. He is rumored to have light gray hair, wine-colored red eyes, and although it hasn't been confirmed, some facial scars. The Goblin Slayer's eyes are quite intense and piercing, give away the unwavering determination and conviction he has for his purpose to kill goblins, symbolizing his relentless pursuit of the cause of goblin extermination. Although the exact details of his facial features are still vague, it is believed that the Goblin Slayer's face bears scars that mark the countless battles and encounters with goblins. He has unkempt, gray hair that adds to his rustic, rugged, and battle-hardened appearance, according to his character. This differs from popular opinion or pop culture when someone as formidable and ruthless as the Goblin Slayer is portrayed as so gorgeous. For instance, in most video games involving magical and mythical characters like goblins and goblin slayers, the Goblin Slayer is likely to resemble a monster himself. Big, broad stature, dirty armor that he has worn for years, rustic looks with numerous battle scars, and sharp facial features with a killer's gaze. This is an apt description of someone like the Witcher, another mythical killing machine in the Witcherverse. He has lived for more than 1,000 years and has killed uncountable beasts, sustaining injuries and scars all over his body. Popular belief has it that the Goblin Slayer may not have revealed his face until now because of his awkwardness and social inadequacy. He himself acknowledges that he lacks social skills, so removing his helmet would perhaps make him more shy and awkward, which doesn't help his already weirdo status in the guild. Marvelous verdict. According to what we've seen so far, the Goblin Slayer is a protector of the village and the guild from the shadows. His persona, character, and appearance to some extent match those of Sasuke from Naruto. Sasuke is driven by revenge against those who wronged the Uchiha clan that he has seen since his childhood. He is also socially inadept and awkward like the Goblin Slayer. When he starts bonding with Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura, he understands the value of having a team and companions rather than a one-man army. Although his character was far more complex and conflicted than that of the Goblin Slayer, it is safe to say that both of them are men full of conviction and are determined to fulfill their causes.